Hi, everyone. My name is Charlene Platon. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Fifth Window, and welcome to our September 2021 Fifth Window Spotlight. Thank you so much for joining us today. And, just to let you know, we hold these monthly spotlights to highlight nurses and their journeys of self-care and well-being, and also to highlight the diverse profession of nursing. And for today's spotlight, we are so excited to introduce our guest. Before we do that, we'll go through some housekeeping. So we'll be able to screen questions and comments that are mentioned during the conversation. And this is a live stream conversation, so we will be having guests tune in from LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook. And so feel free to drop in a comment or question, and we'll do our best to respond to the comments and questions that come through to the chat. And so now we'd like to start by introducing our Fifth Window team. And so Kathy, please introduce yourself.
Certainly. Good morning, everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining us. My name is Kathy Schaefer. I am a registered nurse, a compassion fatigue professional, and one of the co-founders of Fifth Window.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Kathy. And now we are so honored to introduce our September 2021 Fifth Window Spotlight, Dr. Chris Recinos. And Dr. Chris Recinos is the CEO and founder of Nurse Leader Network and Tikidas, an educational platform for nurses. She is also the creator of the mental health app for teens called Hello Harmony. Her former roles include Chief Nurse Executive for Kaiser Permanente South Bay Medical Center, Deputy Nurse Executive for the Veterans Administration, and a variety of academic, nurse practitioner, and registered nurse roles. In her spare time, Chris can be found advocating for suicide prevention policies. Thank you so much, Chris, for joining us today.
I'm thrilled to be able to join, and thank you to everybody on the West Coast that is joining with us this early in the morning. And if you're doing the replay, it's going to be a good one. So stick around.
Yes, thank you so much, Chris. And we are so thrilled to have you as well. We really appreciate you getting up bright and early to chat with us today. And there's just so much to talk about. We've been really wanting to have you on this spotlight with us for some time. And there's so much that you've done in your nursing career, and we really look up to you. So we're really excited to learn from you today. And just to get started, we really want to hear about your personal journey and what you might have done before nursing and while you're nursing. But to start, did you always want to be in nursing? And if not, can you tell us what led you to this path?
So I remember like my earliest memories of like wanting to be a nurse. I had to have been like in elementary school. And I remember like walking past the hospital to school every day. Like every day I would walk past this hospital and I would like take shortcuts in through the hospital. I'd hang out at the gift store, like candy from the gift store was my breakfast. But I'd see all these nurses and I was like, oh my gosh, like that looks so cool. Like the candy stripers. I saw candy stripers and I was like, I want to do that.
Like, yeah, candy stripers. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
I know I'm old. And so I was like, I want to do this. And then I remember, I was still in elementary school. One of my dogs had attacked a litter of kittens we had just had. And I'm literally like there nursing it and like trying to do everything I could to save its life. And I was just like, okay, I really, this is what I want to do. And I remember in school, my teachers were like, Chris, you're too smart to be a nurse. You should be a doctor. You should be a doctor. That's what I heard. My English teacher, like I just remember this in middle school, like, Chris, why do you want to be a nurse? You're too smart to be a nurse. And I was just like, nurses are smart. But so that was just kind of my thinking. And what really led to it was I grew up in foster care here in Los Angeles. And I ended up getting pregnant at 14 years old. And so at that time in the 90s, I don't know how they do it now, but in the 90s, anytime a kid had to go to the hospital, they would drop you off at the hospital, let the hospital take care of you. And then they'd be like, call us when you need a ride. And so I literally got dropped off. I'm like having these pregnancy labor pains at 14 years old. And my nurse was the one that really was there for me. Like she kind of took on the role of my mom. And, I don't think she realized that, but was really just kind of like helping me get through it. And then when I went back to my group home, there was a nurse there that taught me everything. Like at this point, I'm literally still have some Barbie dolls, right? Like stashed away. Like I still kind of was maybe playing with Barbie dolls. And had no clue how to bathe the baby. And I'm like trying to bathe this baby, but drowning her at the same time. And my nurse is like, okay, Chris, like, let me help you not drown your child. And this is how you change a diaper. And this is how you breastfeed. Like she taught me everything. And, I always carried that with me about how she made me feel, right? It wasn't like the actions necessarily that she did, but she made me feel confident as a mom. And she made me feel confident in my ability to take care of this other human being. And I just wanted to be able to give that back. And so I decided, okay, I'm going to become a nurse. Like that is what it is. And, I left the foster care system, went to college, became a nurse. Well, to kind of wrap it back up, I ended up, becoming this chief nurse executive, and I'm giving this award away like my first or second week on the job. And I look over and I see this nurse, and she's like, looks like she's going to cry. And I'm like, oh my gosh, she must be so excited about this award. Like, God, this is awesome. But then something like triggers in my head, and I'm like, wait, I know her. Like, where do I know her from? And scratching my head, I'm like, oh, we must have worked together, like an emergency room, or we worked together somewhere. And then like something felt like it like socked me right in the stomach. And I could tell like she just started bawling, and I started bawling. And then everybody's looking at us like, what the hell's wrong with these people? I'm like the chief nurse executive crying while I'm giving this award in front of all these regional folks and the president of Kaiser, all these people, right? She was the nurse that took care of me. When I
just got chills.
Bathe my baby. She's the one that taught me everything. And I literally like went up, we were crying, we hugged each other, and I became her nurse, executive. And I told her, I'm here because of you. Like I literally am successful because you showed me what I could do, what I could be. And she had zero clue. She's like, oh my God, how did I include you? I didn't do anything. I was just doing my job. Like, yeah, I guess that's what nurses do. And I realized then like how important our work is every day, even though it's our, mundane day to day, like we really are changing lives and people remember us. And we, so that was kind of like how it happened. But I've always wanted to be a nurse. Was told again, don't be a nurse. And, just it happened. And I'm super thrilled. And I would not change my profession if I could go back, and this is who I was born to be.
That's so incredible, Chris. And I feel like I'm going to cry right now just hearing that story. That's so amazing. And, how telling is it, for that nurse to even say, like, I was just doing my job, like, but nurses make such a huge impact. And it was so wonderful to hear that story of yours. And thank you for sharing your journey as well. It sounds like you've already experienced a lot of different challenges as you're growing up in Los Angeles. And so I think that's really impressive sorry, really impressive how far you've come. And when it comes to nursing leadership, I mean, wow, to be a nurse executive at Kaiser Permanente is no small feat. And you're like, yeah, I just became a nurse executive at Kaiser. Like, yeah, that's just the normal trajectory of. But tell us about that. How did you think about nursing leadership? How did you pursue that? Were you also in clinical before that, or tell us how you got to that position?
Yeah, so I started off as an emergency room nurse, and I did that. I loved it, but like the moment I realized that ER nursing was not for me was a night that I ended up losing 4 babies in the ED. So we had, I lost there was a mom that was pregnant with triplets. We lost those triplets, and then we had a mom bring her 2-year-old in who had stopped breathing. And I remember like I was good with like I could literally start a scalp IV, right? And I couldn't get it on this baby because there was just literally the baby had been dead already, I think, for a significant amount of time. And the baby was the same age as my son was at the time. And I remember going back to my car and I was just like, I can't do this. Like I can't. It was too emotionally draining for me. And so my hat's off to emergency room nurses because I couldn't do it. I couldn't see any more babies die. And so I was like, okay, what do I need? What's next? And so I knew I wanted to I always knew I wanted to get like some of a master's in something. And I was like, okay, education versus nurse practitioner versus CRNA. And I was like, I want to be a CRNA. Like, that's why I started working in the ER because I wanted to be a CRNA. Well, of course I didn't have any ICU experience, couldn't become a CRNA. And I was like, next best thing, NP. And so I became an NP, and like my first job right out of NP school, like I'm literally still trying to memorize all of the, like I graduated, I'm still trying to figure out diabetes. Like what's the diabetes medication for the, like okay, that's how new and green I was. And we ended up losing our nursing director, our medical director, our CEO, our finance director, like in a period of months at this clinic.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I never wanted to go into admin because I thought, and sometimes I still think admin is the devil, and I didn't want to be an admin. I wanted to do direct patient care. Like that's why I went into care. I didn't want to do anything other than that. But I realized when everybody left that we were literally about to lose something called our FTC status, meaning we would not have protections for liability, meaning we wouldn't be able to practice at that clinic. And I had gotten so close. It was a very underserved clinic, 99% Spanish speaking. And I mean like dialects, even not just Spanish speaking, but these folks were from a very small village, and they really needed the healthcare, and I was not willing to let that clinic close. So I took on the interim role of the nursing director, got that role, and then after a month of being in that role was promoted to the medical director, which traditionally is held by a physician. And so that really was kind of like my start to administration. Literally I fell into it. They recognized that something in me that I didn't recognize, and just from there I realized how much of a perception change I had around, you actually impact more lives when you're in administration, because you are making these changes, you're bringing in the stakeholders, and, instead of just impacting the lives of the patients that you see every day, you're impacting the lives of, clinics and communities and nations and the world. And so that's kind of like how I got started in that role. And then I ended up going to the Veterans Administration. My husband was a vet, so it just felt like a natural kind of progression. But I did not have intention of becoming an administrator. And, it was the best thing I think that could have happened to me. So, and I think that's how it's true for a lot of people. They don't really believe that they're leadership material. And the fact that you're a nurse makes you a leader. The minute you're in nursing school and you have student nurse after your name, you are now official leader. People look up to you. And so it was kind of my journey. And it was an interesting one. It was a hard one, because when you don't know anything about admin and you don't have a master's in admin, it's a steep learning curve. But it's super fun.
So can I just, piggyback off on that question? So do you think those nurses who want to pursue leadership should, when we design our, graduate education in that there needs to be a well-rounded balance, like more of an MBA type of experience for nurse managers, nurse leaders? Because you're right, at the bedside is a lot different managing one person or maybe several patients' care versus managing a budget, personalities, policies.
Yeah, I mean, I think we do our profession a disservice the way that we have our school set up. So we have a leadership class, and a lot of times those leadership classes are not taught by formal leaders. And that's not always a problem. I mean, we can have informal leaders, but to actually have done the work that you're teaching is different than to just kind of talk about the theory behind it. So we have one leadership class, and then we're like kind of go out on our own. And I think, we're seeing now, especially with the pandemic, that there's so much more out there for nurses around everything, innovation, entrepreneurship. Like it's no joke. And, I was being interviewed a couple of weeks ago, and somebody's like, tell me about what you think about the nurses leaving the bedside. And I was like, it's the best thing since sliced bread. Like, you don't, and the reason I say that is because these nurses would have never been pushed out to expand and to change the world the way that they are. I mean, look at you two, right? Like, there's things that are happening that are making us reflect on, is this the right work for me to be doing? Or do I have more inside of me that's going to change on a much larger scale that we would not have questioned had we not been forced to be uncomfortable in those bedside positions? So I'm off tangent now, because, I'm on my tangent, but I do believe that we're doing a disservice. I do believe that we should be incorporating more of these experiences, shadowing like a leadership person for like a semester. It's not enough. We are leaders from the minute we step into that. And so really helping the students to understand that, like in your patho class, how can we talk about leadership and patho, speaking up for what it is that around pathophysiology or whatnot. And then in our masters, I mean, no comment there, because even in the other, like in my MP program, like, there's a significant number of MPs that are, number one, not MPs anymore. Like half my class is not working as an MP that I went to school with. And, a lot of them went out and opened their own business, and they have like zero skill or knowledge on how to do that. But if we had trained people on the ability to do that, we would have so many more nurse leaders doing things like influencing policy and creating, solutions, innovative solutions, versus people that kind of feel stuck in a profession and then just leave. And then, one of my best friends, like no joke, graduated an MP program, and she, after a couple of years of working, was like, I'm going to Starbucks, and is as happy as a clam at Starbucks. This woman spent hundreds of thousands of dollars in school to become an MP, and she's working at Starbucks as a barista, happy as a clam. And that didn't have to happen. She could have kept all of that information had she been shown another path around, what you can do and how you can utilize your skills in a different way.
Right, it's so true. And a lot of the times the nurse thinks, oh, if I don't like the bedside, I should just leave the whole profession. entirely. And that's definitely not the case. Nurses are in all facets now of healthcare. They are in innovation, they are in leadership, they are in entrepreneurship. But it's beyond that too. There's just so many avenues, and it's one of my favorite things too about nursing. And it's just really inspiring to see you take so many of those different paths. And can you tell us too about your PhD? Because I know you have a PhD as well, in addition to being an NP. And I mean, I just would love to hear about your experience there with your doctorate, and what you did with it, or what your thoughts are for that.
I'm like most nurses, like I'm total type A overachiever. I knew, like, after I got my NP, I was like, I don't want to work with a bunch of doctors and not have a doctorate. What hit me actually, like the aha moment for that was, I was the medical director and I was sitting in a meeting with all physicians for the Community Clinics Association of Los Angeles. And we're sitting there talking, and I had been in that meeting for about a year by that point. I had been going for about a year, and, I had been respected. My ideas had been taken and, ran with. I was really an integral part. And one day I was getting ready to leave, and was just like chit-chatting with one of the docs, and he's like, "Where'd you go to medical school?" And I was like, "I didn't. I went to nursing school. I'm a nurse." And he's like, "Oh." And I was like, "Oh, no." "Oh, no. We're not doing that." But I wanted a PhD just so I could have kind of that leverage and that pull, because, they all thought I was a physician for a year based on my conversations and the way I held myself. And although I didn't want to be seen as a physician, because I'm not a physician, I did want to have equal play. And so I ended up starting at a DNP program. And my first semester at the DNP program, my chair, she's awesome. I work with her now. She was like, "Chris, you can't research as a DNP. Like, what you're trying to do is research." And I was like, "Well, I'm not doing anything other than this. Like, this is what I'm doing for my project. So if this is the wrong program, I'm going into the project." So I left to a PhD program, and then they hired me as faculty. So it was kind of like a win-win. So I got to work there, and I now currently teach DNP students there. But it was great. And so I got it really for that reason. And what I found was, as I was going through the program, I fell in love with research. I hated research in my master's program. Like, I could not stand it. I couldn't read. I would read articles, and I'm like, I still don't get these formulas and how they're doing the stat analysis, and how do I know if this is a real. Hated it. But I fell in love with it when I was doing my own, because I was doing my own I was pursuing my own passion. And so, now I think the great thing about it is, as I realized, little things I was learning in my PhD program, I could directly utilize as a nurse leader. So as a nurse executive, I was able to really beef up our research program and look at, really understand that without the research and the evidence-based practice, it doesn't matter how long I work on finance, patient experience, it's, safety. It doesn't matter how long, if I'm not utilizing the evidence-based practice and the research behind it, like, you use that and it solves all your other problems. Nobody understands that. They think you have to no, my focus is on the budget. No, my focus actually needs to be on research and bringing in innovative solutions so that we can control our costs. And so, I'm thankful that I have it. Now, I would say that if I had known what I know today, I would not have gone for it that early. I would have waited until I was a little bit older, because I really did a lot of sacrificing of my time with my kids. And now that I have one that has passed away, I can't get that time back. So I would have postponed it a little bit to make sure that it was the right time for me. And I really implore everybody who's listening today, anytime you're thinking about adding on something like that to your plate, look at the reality around your life situation. And is it really the best time today? Maybe that answer is yes, but don't sacrifice the important things for your career, because you sometimes can't get them back.
Right. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I think that's one of those hotly debated topics, right? DNP versus PhD versus not at all, or when do you get that? It's one of those questions that I think it's really a personal decision, just like you said, and it really just depends on where you are in your life, what your goals are at that moment, or what you want to do in the future. And is it really something that you really need to do at this time? Because, a lot of people pursue their NP, even though they don't really want to be an NP. And I've seen it happen over and over again. And then they just end up working at the bedside still as in their current position. So,
or at Starbucks.
Which honestly sounds, I want to be a barista for a long time too.
That actually brings up, the question that we had for you regarding the pandemic. So you have worked in a position, you've been at both sides, right? You've been at the bedside and you've been a nurse executive, and now you no longer are at, as a nurse executive in a healthcare system. And, we've known for the longest time that healthcare answer to the nurse turnover is just churn out more nursing students, right? No one has actually stopped to say, why are they all leaving the bedside? And the pandemic has made it worse because now it's not because we're dissatisfied. It's just, there's no more mental capacity for us to be at the bedside. And so I guess the question for you is, how do we change that environment? Like, your friend now works as a barista, and I'm sure she is mentally so much more happier than, and I'm sure there are parts of her that feel guilty that she left, patient care.
Yeah.
So how do we start changing that idea or that belief in the healthcare system that the toxic environment that we work in has to change in order for nurses to really flourish?
Well, I would start off by saying this. I learned a long time ago, you can't control what others do. You can only control what you do. Yeah. And the reality is that not enough of us as nurses are standing up and saying, these are our boundaries, and you cannot pass my boundaries, which is allowing this toxicity to continue to fester. And so it really starts with us individually. Like, we sit there and say, what can healthcare systems do? What can you do? What can you do to help yourself become more resilient? What boundaries are you going to put into place so that hospitals know, like, you ain't crossing this boundary? I already said I'm not coming in on Saturday. Don't even think about calling me. My phone's going to be off. I'm not coming in. So, I mean, I think it starts with what we can control individually, and that is ourselves and our boundaries and what we do. And that really needs to start before we get into nursing school. What we do in nursing school is we reward bad behavior. And what I mean by that is you have to have a 4.0, all this volunteering experience, all this stuff that we know you've sacrificed your self-care for. We know that, to get into the program, right? We want the best of the best. And these are the people that tend to be like me, type A, that don't stop to really smell the roses. And so then they come into nursing school, and then we give them these schedules where they're sitting on Zoom for 8, 9, 10 hours a day straight. Yeah. And then they go into clinical for 12 hours a day straight. Like, they have no time for self-care, and we are giving them rewards for A+, and everybody's like seeking that. We're seeking these gold star achievements regularly in sacrifice of our personal health and our personal well-being. Mm-hmm. And so it really needs to start early on. I think, number one, on the journey, it really needs to start with you as an individual. And then when we come to the organizations, there really has to be a partnership around what is really realistic. If you look at most organizations obviously want to keep their doors open, right? So there is a budget that has to be adhered to, but there are a variety of other ways that we can look at adding revenue, or there's different ways that we could add revenue so that we could have the right staffing that we need. And then really, like, understanding your turnover, right? I've worked at like a bazillion organizations, and the turnover has been different for each. I've been at organizations where literally they pay so little, but people stay because the culture is awesome. And then I've been at organizations where they pay so much, and the people are like, I'm out of here. I can't take it. I don't care how much you pay me. And so it really is like, what does that culture look like? And it obviously starts with the leader who's running that unit, who's running that, that's another thing. We reward people, we promote people who are, again, type A, tend to do a lot of self-sacrifice, tend to kind of be the workhorses, right? That take it on. Yeah. And that's not the right way to approach selecting leaders. It really isn't. It teaches the culture that's okay. And so we really need to have the person that's like, no, I'm taking my vacation. I have no cell phone. You're not going to be able to get a hold of me. You guys got to figure it out, because I trust that you are capable enough to handle any problem that comes your way, because I've prepared you enough to do that. So, I could like go on and on for days and days, but I think it really is going to take looking at different ways that we can do what we need to do around budget, different things that we need to do around taking care of patient care. And it should not be adding a cost to our patients. So the healthcare is already expensive enough. It's already not safe enough. If you're coming to the hospital, there's a potential you're not coming out of it. And so we really need to look at different ways that we can change that. We also need to stop saying the politicians and, well, it's Medicare. And if you have a problem with it, I've always been told, go take care of go deal with it. Right. So how many of us have actually said, you know what, actually, instead of just calling my legislator, I'm going to become the legislator. Like, I know what is right for my community, and so you look at these communities that have nurses that are politicians. We have one in California. Her name was Mayor Beth Haney. She was like, I live in this community. I have a business in the community. I know what this community is. I'm gonna run for mayor. And she did, and she won. And so she was able to really change a lot of different things with a nursing lens. So I think, we just always say, well, somebody else is going to do it, or we allow other people to speak up for us on our behalf. We allow these organizations that maybe we're not even members and go to no meetings with speak up for us on our behalf. We got to start being the ones that like pull up our big girl and big boy shorts and make the changes ourselves. Like we can't rely on them to do it. Like we are them. And we forget that a lot in nursing. Okay, I'm off my soapbox.
No, that's okay. We love it because, I think for Charlene and I, that's a really big point as well. I think that's one of the reasons why we became so involved in the hackathon and pursuing developing Fifth Window and really revolutionizing nurses' well-being. Saying that we need to stand up for ourselves because no one else will. And we need to teach you how to stand up for yourselves, right? And because it just doesn't happen overnight. And you're right, it needs to start in nursing school. And we need to be able to create boundaries. And we still live, I think, in the 1950 mentality of how nurses should practice and how things run. And when people question authority, it shouldn't be, we should open the table to listen, because there may be new, fresh ideas that are coming up from the bottom instead of just saying, oh, we've tried that before in 1962 and it didn't work out. Well, it's 2021. Maybe it will work out. And if it doesn't, then let's try it again. So no, we appreciate your advocacy. So in addition to your leadership and your advocacy, you're really a great innovator, and you have been through nursing hackathons, and we've seen you at some of the hackathons. And can you share like how you started that journey for us?
Totally accidental. I was not looking to become an innovator. I was just like, that's for smart people. Like, I'm not going to be an innovator. I'll own a business, but I don't know that it's going to be like innovative or whatever. Like I kind of had resigned myself to that. I was in a Sansiel meeting on a Thursday, and I think it was literally like the Thursday before, I'm pretty sure. Rebecca Love was talking, and she was just, like pitching this hackathon thing. And I was like, I have this weekend off. Like, maybe I'll do it. I don't know. And so then I like tell my husband, my kids, I'm like, hey, you guys want to do like a hackathon with me this weekend? And they were like, I didn't even know if they could come, right? I'm like inviting a 10-year-old, and I was just like, let me see if they can come. And my husband was like, yeah, let's do it. Like, what do you want to do it on? And I was like, like, I have zero ideas. And so I was like, we'll just hop onto somebody's, whatever they're doing, and we'll just do the experience. And so I worked that day, and I ended up not getting off till late, and I missed the like opening ceremonies on the Friday night. So then I go to look for a group, and like, there's no groups looking for more nurses. Like they all had like the quota of nurses met. And I was like, shoot, I got to start my own now. And so I was like trying to think of like, what do I want to do? And I knew I wanted to do something in the suicide prevention space, because that's how I lost my daughter. But I wasn't sure what. And so I was like thinking, I'll create like this app, and like, it'll have like, different ways, like mental, like kind of incorporate like mental health first aid into it. And like, we can use it for kids or whatever. And my 20-year-old daughter and my 10-year-old son were standing there, and they're like, you're crazy. Ain't nobody going to touch that, Mom. Like, nobody's going to touch that thing. Like, we don't have time for that. And I was like, well, what do you like? Like, tell me what you like. And I literally sat down all my kids, and I was like, let's have a mini focus group. Like, tell me what you like in your apps. Like, you like, whatever the app is, tell me what you like about it. And so I was like taking these notes of what they liked, and I was like, okay, how can we like transform this into an app that we could use for suicide prevention? And I realized like it has to be a game. Like if it's going to be marketed for kids and teens and young adults, it has to be a game. Like they like games. And so, we like went through this weekend where I had a couple other nurses on the team. They also had kids that had all the kids that we interviewed had some type of experience with a mental health illness. And so we asked them like, what would you use? And so we like literally just designed this thing. And then I pulled up Canva and was like, okay, let me like, wireframe what it would look like on Canva. And, Hello Harmony was born. And so I did not, have any dream or hope of this happening. But as I pitched it, I began to see like what could really be. And then my daughter posted it. Like I still didn't know. I was like, my daughter posted it on Instagram. And within like 5 minutes, she had like dozens and dozens and dozens of kids reach out and say, where can I find this app? And I was like, okay, people are going to want this. Like, let's, and to this day, cause I still don't have it out. It's still in beta right now, or it's going to be in beta. I still have these kids like, when is it? And then I have, as I speak about it, parents are like, oh my God, my kid's struggling. Like, where can I get the app? And so, it's been really fulfilling and meaningful to know that there are people out there that want to use this and that it's going to be able to really save some lives. So it was a magnificent experience. Like I can't speak more highly of it. You just don't, I didn't realize going into like, this jumping into somebody else's group, that there would be something of this caliber that was created, and any one of us can do it, because I didn't have any special training and anything. And so, I would recommend that if you have not attended a hackathon, you are missing out. It might and will change your life.
Absolutely, and thank you for sharing that. Kathy and I also came to build our idea from a hackathon, and it's really life-changing, and it's really inspiring. I was in the hackathon where you pitched Hello Harmony, and it was so awesome. And just on that note too, I did want to know if you'd like to share your story behind that, because September, as you know, is Suicide Prevention Awareness Month, and I really want to have this platform for you to share your story as well, because I think it's so incredible, and so what you're doing is just an amazing mission.
Yeah, I mean, I knew I always kind of had like a love for mental health, because I grew up in foster care. I'd seen a therapist from the time I was like this high, and they keep you in therapy when you're in foster care, and I just had a lot of experience with personal like mental health issues, like with my mom, and just just a lot of different issues. And so I always had a love of it. And then when I went to the VA, I realized the impact it was really having on people's lives, and that's actually what led me to my dissertation topic, which was PTSD in veterans. And so I've always had this kind of love, but I remember I told you I had a daughter when I was 14. I had a baby when I was 14. So I had this daughter, and she was had just graduated high school, had been going to UCLA for about a year. She was a pre-med student, and bright. She was like super bright. Like the kid was like, in first grade, and she was reading at like a 7th grade level. Like she was just this like little bright shining star. And she was literally why I did everything that I did. Like my identity was in her, because we grew up together, and she was the reason that I was able to keep that resilience and that motivation. I didn't want to end up having her in foster care. I didn't want her to have that experience. And she like changed so many lives. Like she had helped so many of her friends through their issues with, like, she had a friend that actually a couple of months before she died had a suicide attempt, and she, was there for her friend, and was a great girl. And then, January 13th happens. I'm getting ready for this huge meeting that I have over at Kaiser, and I'm getting dressed, and I'm 4 months pregnant, and I'm like trying to get all my kids. I'm like the old lady who lives in a shoe, trying to get all these kids like dressed and fed and in the car and ready to go. And I realized her car's outside, and she was a commuter to UCLA, and I was like, what the heck? Is like, she must have went out, because it is late. She's always gone before I am. And so I approached her door, and as I go to her door, there was a little like Post-it, like right on the floor. And it said, don't let the kids see, I love you, Harmony. And I was like, what the hell? And so I went immediately to open her door, and it was unlocked, which her door was never unlocked. And I pushed it open, and she was laying in her bed. She was lifeless. And I immediately started CPR. Like I forgot how exhausting CPR was, but like literally went into nurse mode. Like I was not in mom mode. I was in nurse mode. And, despite trying to do CPR on her for like 15 minutes before paramedics got there, I knew already, like, rigor mortis had already started to set in, and I was not going to be able to save her life. And I looked back and realized all the signs were there. I'm a nurse. All the signs were there. She was an avid gamer, and she died in January, and in December she sold all of her gaming equipment, everything. And I was like, I remember distinctly like saying to her, that's a sign of somebody who's going to die of suicide. Like, why did you sell your stuff? And she literally was like, Mom, I am going to be a doctor. Like, I need to focus on school. She's like, and I wanted to buy you guys gifts, and I'm not working. So I just sold it because it's distracting me. I want to be a good student. Like, literally totally bought into it. Even though I mentioned to her, like, hey, that's a sign of suicide. Like, I knew. And so, she had just all these symptoms, right? She was like gaining weight. She was like, had stopped eating. She was disheveled. Like, she had these symptoms, but she was explaining them off. And I think that for those that are listening, is something that you want to pay attention to when you see these changes in your family and friends or patients, because a lot of times they'll explain them off, and then we are like, okay, well, they explained them off, it makes sense. But the reality is that they're really having an internal struggle inside. And at that moment, like after losing her, I literally had my own plan for suicide. Like I couldn't take it. I was just like, okay, I was in the middle of a PhD program. I was, working at Kaiser as an administrator. and I did not want to be alive. She was my everything, and I had lost my purpose and my sense of meaning, and created my own plan. I was going to do the same thing that she did, the exact same way. And when I was like, I had purchased everything, was like ready to go, I sat there and I was like, if I die, I'm taking my baby with me, because I was pregnant. I was 4 months pregnant. And I couldn't do it. I couldn't kill my baby. And so it brought me to like understanding what she experienced before she died. And it brought me to understanding what people who are experiencing these feelings feel like. You literally feel like nothing is going to help. Nothing. Like, so my goal was then to really just try and make sure that there was no other moms that would be in my shoes, like no other moms that had to bury their children, no other brothers and sisters and family members that had to find their loved one deceased, and like didn't know what to do. I knew I wanted to do something, but the hurt was too new, was too raw. Was a brand new mom. I had just had the baby, a couple of months after. And so, I just was kind of like trying to find my way, and had enormous amounts of depression, enormous amounts of like maladaptive coping and bad behaviors. And the hackathon was really what pulled me through, because my sense of meaning and purpose came back. I had lost it when I lost her, but I found it. And I think that's a big piece of becoming resilient, which is really making sure that you're very clear on what your meaning and your purpose is, not attaching it to a person, maybe persons or communities, or but really, because that's what creates that resilience and gets you through those times where you don't think you're going to be able to get through them. And so I could go on and on again about like seeking meaning and purpose in your life, but we tend to seek happiness as individuals. And the reality is that happiness is a fleeting emotion, and it's not appropriate to be happy all the time, right? I couldn't be happy at my daughter's death. That wouldn't be appropriate. And so we need to stop seeking things that aren't going to be always, right? Like we can't always be happy. We need to seek things like purpose and meaning that are going to be always, because that's really what helps us thrive in the good times and what helps us get through those bad times. And now I cry at 7:00 in the morning.
Oh, no, I'm right there with you. I mean, thank you so much, Chris. I know that there's so much that comes up when you tell this story, and I know and I really thank you for sharing it, because it's challenging. I mean, in addition to all you've experienced and the different things you've gone through, I just continue to be impressed when I hear that story, just because of how you overcame the challenges and what you're doing now. I think that it's just so I almost have no words, because it's so much emotion to encounter there. And I really want to also say, for those who are listening, if if you are thinking of suicide or have any plans, I really just want to encourage everyone to think about using the resource of the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 800-273-8255. It's really great to be aware of different resources, and I think that what you're building with Hello Harmony is such an amazing tool. You certainly touched me when I first heard that story at the hackathon. You've really, I think just by telling your story, you've changed so many lives already, Chris. I really commend you for that. And Kathy, did you want to add to that as well?
Well, I was just going to say, as a mother myself, I think that when we listen to other people be vulnerable, there are parts to those stories that touch us, and we realize that we're not alone in this world. So just like Charlene said, that if there are those in the audience who are feeling like they are alone, you're not. I mean, there is someone out there. And again, I appreciate and thank you so much for being so vulnerable with us and our audience this morning. I'm sure that it doesn't get easier over time, telling that story, all the time to everyone, when people want to know about, well, how did Hello Harmony come about? And so for you to be able to take that resiliency and use it for the good to keep her memory alive is something that I would just want to say, again, thank you so much for being our advocates as well as others' advocates.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really, it's not easy to do, but I really encourage those that are listening that have had experiences to don't stay in the shadows. 1 in 5 people have had a mental health illness. And about 50% of those have that illness before 14 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And so we need to really be in these conversations early on in people's lives and our kids' lives. And we need to tell them that it's okay, because there's such stigma. When my daughter died, she had texted the crisis text line, and they told her, why don't you tell, who do you trust? And she said, my mom. And they said, why don't you tell her? And she literally wrote, because I don't want my mom to think I'm crazy. And so, we really have to drop the word crazy. We need to drop the words committed suicide. Committed is something that you do when you go to prison. It's not something that happens as a result of having a mental health illness. Like, we need to change our language, and we need to be open with saying, I'm one of those 1 in 5. I am. And I'm still standing today, and there's still purpose, and there's still more that I can pour into this world, and more that I can do to help others a lot. And that's what helps heal me. And so, but the more we hide it, or we look at it as a weakness, or discuss it in a way that is condemning, or makes a person feel shame, the more we're going to continue to have these rising rates of suicide. So it's really time to change our language and not say things like, oh, she's going crazy, he's crazy. Like, even in jokes, people who are feeling that way hold on to that, and that's what they remember in those moments of desperation.
Right, exactly.
Sorry, Charlene.
Oh, no, go ahead, Kathy.
I was just going to say, so you talked about how you were at this low point in your life. And can you share with us, though, the parts that you have, what brought you out? I mean, you shared a little bit of what really brought you out of it, but how do you maintain your mental wellness? How do you really maintain your self-care? What do you do, like, on a daily basis for that?
So I have like this little, I'll like show my camera, this little thing on the wall right over there. You see that little Post-it?
Yeah.
And I'm going to read to you what it says. So I made myself some commitments. I looked at myself in the mirror and I said, Chris, you're worth it. You are worth this. And you are going to make commitments, and you're going to hold those commitments to yourself like you hold your commitments to other people. And so they say my non-negotiables. My non-negotiables, I'm going to stop working by 4 p.m., except when I have gooseberries, which is my mastermind. We meet at 7 p.m. and I love them, and I would always but I'm going to stop working at 4 p.m. I'm going to meditate, work out 30 minutes every day, rain or shine. I'm going to do one of the two. Try to do both, but I at least fit one of them in. I'm going to have a meaningful conversation or activity with each one of my family members daily. So every single day I'm going to sit down, and even if it's 10 minutes, I'm going to sit down and talk to my son about his day, or the little girl that likes him, or whatever it is. We're going to talk about a book. We're going to talk about something that's happening in politics, whatever, or we're going to play a game, or we're going to read a book together, whatever they want to do. But every single day it has to happen, because I let too many years go by where that wasn't happening. And then it says eventually 3-day weekends. And guess what? I'm right now on like a 4-day week. Like, I literally am off Thursday and Friday, Saturday and Sunday. So, so there's a couple things that I do. The first thing I do is really assess. Like, I have a journal here, and I assess where I'm at with each aspect of my life. So I look at like my financials, I look at my health and well-being, I look at my community service, I look at my relationships with my family and friends, I look at my pleasure time, like what am I doing for recreational time? Like, I look at all these things, and I look back on the last week and say, okay, like, where am I struggling? What did I not do this week? Because I know it's a balance, right? Sometimes and then I make smart goals around those. Like, literally this takes like 5 minutes. I do it in the bathroom. All right. Like, get up on Monday morning, go into the bathroom. I'm going to look and do my little like assessment and figure out, okay, what do I need to like, did I miss a couple of those 10-minute things? Do I need to put them in? I have not. So that's been great. But really just going back and reflecting on, like, what do I need to work on this week? And it's continual, right? We have strategic plans, we have goals and organizations, but then we don't have them for our lives. So how do we expect to meet any of our goals? Or do you even know what your goals are? Like, I sit down and look at what my goals are. So I do that, but I also block time. So there's, in addition to those 4 days that I'm not working, I also have like block time out where I literally just sit and think. Like, just sit and think about whatever my mind wants to think about. Sometimes it's stressing out and it just needs time to stress and process. Sometimes I'm thinking about like really cool things in my business. Sometimes I'm thinking about like, where do I, what's next on with whatever. And so, but it's my time, and I don't let anybody interrupt it. My kids, the only person maybe that interrupts is my dogs or my cats, because they'll come put their butt in my face. But like, literally, it's my time to sit and reflect. And, that's what's led me to writing a book. That's what's led to all this stuff, because I actually have quiet time that nobody gives themselves. Nobody does. So when you talk about like my own self-care, number one, I look at what goals I want to meet. I wrote down a set of goals last year. They were my 5-year goals, and 90% of them are done. 90% of my goals for 5 years are done in 1 year. And so I look at my goals, I create action around them. I really reflect on like where I want to be. Am I showing up? Am I living the way that I say I want to live? Am I being a role model for my kids around boundaries? I have my non-negotiables, and then I have my reflection time that nobody can take because it's my time and I love it. And I usually sit in my jacuzzi and eat berries while I'm on my mind time. And people say like, I've had so many people come to me like, how do you fit it all in? Like, how do you have a business? How do you have a podcast? How do you work? How do you have this job? How do you have this? How do you have the kids? How do you go to school? How do you fit it all in? The reality is I don't. I pick what I'm going to fit in. And it's important to recognize that when you say yes to something, you're saying no to everything else. So I really look at, like, if I say yes to this interview, for example, what am I saying no to? I'm not saying no to anything right now because all my kids are sleeping. But what is it when I say yes to something that I'm saying no to everything else? And it makes it real easy to say, sorry, I can't do it. And there's no guilt behind it. So I really am I look at what is a no deal, no holds bars. Like I'm a coach and I will coach my kids and I will be at every single one of their, games and sessions. And like, that's a non-negotiable. How do I make time for it? Because I say it's a non-negotiable. And if something else falls in that time, I'm not doing it. And if somebody gets mad, that's not my problem. That's their problem. So we got to change that like guilt that we get by saying no. Because we have to recognize that when we say yes, we're saying no to really important things sometimes. And it took losing my daughter for me to be able to do that. So hopefully with the listeners today, I spark something in you where you're like, okay, let me reflect on what I'm actually saying no to by saying yes to these things that I'm saying yes to.
I love that, Kristen. There's so much to unpack there. I think you had so many great gems and insights, and I really love the mindset because it could be really easy for people to say yes. I think nurses are natural givers and they tend to please others before themselves. And I think that at times when you're saying yes, they don't realize that they are saying no to other things that could be really important and could be elevating their life as well. And I really love how you said that you really spend the time off when you need to have that time off, because I think in our culture, in our society, there is a huge kind of glamour to toxic work life, like
Filling it all in, right?
hustle,
Stuffing it all in.
right? The hustle, the grind, and even in entrepreneurship, there's this really glamorous kind of view of you have to work like 20 hours a day. You can't sleep. You can't eat well. You can't spend time with family. And so I really just appreciate how you said, actually, you can do it all and you could still accomplish 90% of your goals in a year that I had for 5 years. I think that's an amazing, amazing feat. And I just really want to emphasize that because it's not easy, but you put in the work, you set the boundaries, just like you said earlier, and you got all the things you wanted, or you're on that path.
Yeah,
So
you really like reflect on like what you're doing today, because what you're doing today, if you tell me what you're doing today, Charlene, I'll predict your future with like 99% accuracy. So, what you're doing today is going to take, and that was a big part of me leaving Kaiser. I love the job. I love the people. It's one of my most favorite jobs. Like literally the people there are so friggin' amazing. It's not even funny. And my goal was to donate $50,000 a month to American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. And I was not making $50,000 a month. So that would never have happened. That reality just would not have meshed. I wanted to also be able to take my kid. I wanted to be the PTA mom that's always there, nosy in the business and fighting for every right that I can. I wanted to be the one that took my kids to all of the, whatever it was that they had. I wanted to be the one that was cheering. Like I literally put on my son's jersey and I'm like cheering for his football team and put on face paint. I wanted to be that mom, and I wanted to not miss out on those experiences, but I couldn't do that as a nurse executive. My commute was almost 3 hours. It was like 2 hours, in traffic. And then on top of that, nurse executives tend to work really long hours. I could not be who I was. My goal was to be by staying in that role. And so it was a lot of reflection and an easy decision when I realized it would never lead me to where it was that I wanted to go, but if I stayed there. And so it was time to go, and I've left. And, and that's how it is with all of you that are listening. Like, is what you're doing today in your job and your family, whatever, like going to get you to where you're going? Because if it's not, the answer is simple. It's time to change. And change is hard, people. Change is hard, my friends. But guess what's even harder? Mm-hmm. Going back and looking 5 years from now and being in the exact same unhappy spot that you're in today.
Yeah,
right,
so
exactly.
True. So true. So true.
Right. And yeah. Oh, go ahead, Kathy.
I was going to say, you have a quote next to your computer, and I have a quote that I read all the time too, that I think it wasn't until just recently when I had a little tragedy in my life that I've actually, so, as a compassion fatigue professional, I share with people, how do they separate work-life balance, and how are they getting through this? And it wasn't until just recently that I realized that I was literally talking to people, but I wasn't living what I was saying. And my quote is by Brene Brown: compassionate people ask for what they need. They say no when they need to. And when they say yes, they mean it. They're compassionate because their boundaries kept them out of resentment. And so I think everything you've just said so eloquently is wrapped up in that quote for me to keep by my computer.
I love that quote. I have not heard it, and I love it, but it's the truth. And it's a truth that we have to face, because we have an option. We can be on our deathbed and be like, I set out to do some things, and I did what I said I was going to do, or I really enjoyed what I had. Or you can have a life of regrets. Like, I regret not being there for my kids. I regret the divorce. I regret this. I regret that. Like, you can have those regrets. So it's really up to you to design your life in the way that suits you, and you need to not feel guilty about it, because number one, if you were to leave your job tomorrow, trust me, as a nurse, I'll have your position posted tomorrow. It is what it is, right? Like, if you were to die tomorrow, I'd have your position posted tomorrow, right? Like,
right, right.
It's cold, and it's the reality of the world that we live in. But if I were to die tomorrow, my kids could never replace me. My husband could nobody could ever replace me. And so it's important to remember that as I'm deciding where to spend my time and how to spend my time. Like, the writing's on the wall.
Yeah.
And I love the emphasis too on not having guilt, because I feel like, we talked to a lot of nurses during the pandemic, and one of the overlying themes was this feeling of guilt. I feel like I'm not doing enough for the pandemic. I feel like I'm not helping my fellow nurses enough. I feel like I'm not just doing enough in general as a person, or people feeling like lazy during the pandemic. It's crazy how overwhelming the sense of guilt can be. But when, just like you said, when you know what your values are, when you know what you want to accomplish, you don't have that sense of guilt anymore, once you know that what you're saying yes to is what's really bringing you joy and was really bringing you that purpose that you've set out for yourself. Yeah. So I really wanted to give you kudos and just say it's not easy, but it's definitely worth it.
As I was writing my book, I came up with this little mantra. And so you need to do it. And it's give yourself the space and the grace. You've got to constantly give yourself the space for what you need and the grace to do what it is that you need to do, because we don't give ourselves either one of those. And that's what leads to burnout.
And your book, is that out now? How is that going?
So I'm actually going to be releasing it on my daughter's death day. So January 13th. So I'm working on it right now. We're doing all of the marketing and the editing, but I chose that date because it was a meaningful date to me.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And the book, I know you mentioned it before on LinkedIn, and I'm just so inspired by that. I mean, writing a book in itself is a really hard, really challenging opportunity, but we can't wait for the release. I'm definitely going to let me know when it's out. I definitely want to purchase one. So,
can you share a little bit of that journey with us?
Yeah.
Oh, I hate writing. I hate it. That's why I podcast.
I think for many nurses, we hate writing. Maybe that's why we stay at the bedside.
Yeah, it was key for my dissertation. I love the research process, but then having to write it all, I was like, oh my God, I still hate writing. But I wanted to write something that helped nurses get out of this mindset of always chasing a gold star, always having to be the best, always having to do more, always having it So the book really is a really easy and applicable way to identify the habits that are disservicing you and how to stop them, and then how to really create habits that are going to get you where you want to do based on the reflection that I've showed you. So everything that I'm writing in the book, I'm living it. I'm going through it. I'm doing it. It's working for me. I have a life that is full of meaning and joy. And I wanted to be able to share that process. It's really funny because it's literally the nursing process. I that time, and I transitioned that into how to really take stock of your life and ownership of your life and how to transform it. And so I'm super excited. It's coming together. I've shared it with non-nurses, and they're like, oh my God, why'd you only write this for nurses? Everybody could use this. And I'm like, the nurses are my people. But yeah, so I'm excited to have it, but it's been really fun. You got to dedicate, man. And what I found is that if you even just write 8 minutes a day, literally just 8 minutes, if you were to write 8 minutes every single day, you'd have 2 books published that year. 8
Yeah,
minutes a day, like,
wow.
right? Like, I could write 8 minutes with my kids in the tub and I'm sitting right there, right? Like, I mean, we have 8 minutes a day. So it a lot of people think it takes so much. It is hard. It is really hard. But it literally, if you stay consistent, it's gonna happen. You'll finish your book. So if you're interested in writing a book, I say do that too.
Awesome.
Well, that's definitely an inspiration for those of us who are non-writers who have a story to tell. And I think lots of nurses have stories to tell that I think many people would be interested in, but just the thought of sitting and writing a book is very overwhelming. But for 8 minutes a day, you can certainly
you can do it. Yeah. And I know we're already getting to the end of the hour, and I'm so sad because
I don't want it to end.
We need to have you come back part 2, 3, 4, 5. And we want to hear about the book and everything else. And I just wanted to say also congratulations for being awarded the Johnson & Johnson Quickfire Mental Health Challenge.
Thank you.
And what's next for Hello Harmony? Is that, I think you mentioned, will that be released soon? I know you're working on a beta.
Yeah, we're trying to get the beta out in December, but what I'm finding is that the artificial intelligence that we're using is really complex because we want to make sure that we don't miss somebody's language and end up having a bad outcome. So it may end up being pushed back. We're still right now like thinking that'll be released in December, but more to come on that because we're fixing the AI. And then we also have we're doing some designing, so you're going to be able to design your friend, what your friend looks like that you're talking to. And that also, I was like, well, just slap some yellow hair on there. Like, isn't it easy to make an emoji? It's not easy to make an emoji. The coding is crazy. So we're like finding all these things where I'm like, oh yeah, it'll be done, piece of cake. And my developers are like, you're smoking something, Christina. Like, it's not that easy. Like, okay, I guess it's not.
Well, that's so inspiring, and we can't wait to hear about the beta. We can't wait to hear about the book. And again, we just wanted to say thank you so much, Chris. We really appreciate your time spending it with us this morning, so early in the West Coast. And and also, where can people find you if they want to learn more about you?
They can go to either LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn, Chris Recinos. I think I'm the only Chris Recinos, so it shouldn't be hard. And then they can come to my website, www.nurseleadernetwork.com, or check out the podcast Nurse Leader Network.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. We're going to go ahead and put those links in the notes. And just wanted to say thank you so much to all of our listeners for tuning in on an early Saturday morning. We had a really great conversation, and we're going to have the recording available as well. But just to everyone listening as well, these are monthly Fifth Window Spotlights, and we are available on social media if you want to learn more. So go ahead. You can learn more about us at fifthwindow.com. And again, we'll go ahead and put the notes for Chris and about this recording soon on our social media platforms. But thank you again, Chris. Thanks you, Kathy. It was great to have you, and we look forward to having you back again soon.
For sure. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.